share it. But
We're live, guys, I think.
we are live. Okay, so good afternoon. It's 12:05 here in Frankfurt, CET. We're May 14th, Thursday. Countdown to the demo day, less than a week away. Our demo day will be on May 20th, starting at 4 p.m. Be sure to tune in then to see what our startups have achieved. Today we have the workshop with Nimrod Kramer, a good friend of mine. And he's based in Israel. He's one of the first entrepreneurs I had a pleasure to work with, and now I'm learning from him. So Nimrod, very welcome. And please tell us who you are, a short introduction, and take it away.
All right. So, hi, nice to see you again, everyone. I already recognize some of the faces from yesterday's session that I hope it was helpful. I hope that today I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that I've been saying yesterday, but definitely like the one-on-one sessions were a bit more thorough than the concepts that I'm going to present here. But anyway, even for the guys that I did not have the chance to meet, so if you think it would be useful for you guys, so we can try and coordinate it for maybe next week or the next 2 weeks. So
for sure, these one-on-one sessions were just to clarify some of the teams. We thought that it would be helpful for them to get a bit more focus, especially on the problem definition. And Nimrod will touch upon that a bit today. And therefore, some of the teams did have one-on-ones with Nimrod, and others, basically, if we focus on whether it's more the digital marketing side or so forth, and this is how it goes. Continue.
Sure. So basically, I think unlike other mentors, I'm not sure that I really qualify to this definition of a mentor. I'm more like you guys. I'm also an entrepreneur myself. And I have my own company. We're doing emotion analytics. Basically, we're digitizing human emotions. We do it with wearables and vital signs, and we're the only we're the most accurate engine in the world for that purpose. We do a lot of awesome things with increasing happiness level in theme parks like Disney World and Universal Studios, and working with some of the largest manufacturers for embedding our technology into it, like Apple, like Sony, like those guys, Nintendo. So a lot of exciting stuff is going to happen with the technology that we're developing. But here I come in this meeting, and same as you guys, but just I want to share a few of the insights that I had from the past few years being an entrepreneur, and a lot of things that I learned from, mostly from failing, which is probably a common thing that I share with most of you, that we all failed at least once before. So let me share the screen and I'll just start the presentation. And I try to make it like interactive, although we're using video conferencing. Feel free, to stop me anytime, to ask me a question, to challenge me, to criticize me, to say that I'm a complete fool and that you want to quit right now, but you don't know how to do it. Whatever you want to say, just say that. I don't care. I'm Israeli.
Nimrod, just to add, because you were a little bit too modest, but you did raise a few millions with a pitch deck only. So
yeah,
taking it out
that's
of
true. I did it a couple of times actually. Yeah, I really love, I told it to some of the teams, I'm really passionate about fundraising, especially fundraising in a pre-product stage. So that means that I really love fundraising based on presentation and personal passion only, which is, in my opinion, one of the greatest intellectual challenges for any entrepreneur. Of course, I like fundraising in general. This is something that I'm quite passionate about. But anyway, yeah, let's dig in. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So some of the things I'm passionate about beside business stuff is that I
Nimrod,
really like table tennis, ping pong.
Nimrod, do you mind just a really quick question? Because
Yeah.
I'm very curious about, you can tell us after the session, but so are there books that you really liked reading about VC and let's say term sheets and all of those topics? I have a couple, but always happy to know which other ones you could push forward.
Sure. I can share. I think the most efficient way would be that I'll share with Ram some resources that I
Super, thank you so much.
particularly like by email, and he will distribute it. But anyway, I'll address your request by saying that the best way to learn, without any doubt, is by trying it yourself. Before I got the first ticket, I think I saw more than 300 investors that told me no. Back in 2012-13, before I got the first check of 250K. So there is a lot of
You
things.
even traveled to Hong Kong to meet my guys. When
Yeah,
I
that's
was
true.
still
That's
based in
true.
Hong Kong.
Yeah. I did a lot of stupid things, but no, just kidding.
And we will still do a lot of stupid things.
Yeah, and well, we're live, right? So I'll spare some of the things for off the record conversation with you guys. So yeah, a few things I'm passionate about beside doing business is first, I really like table tennis. I used to be a professional ping pong player, second place in Israel 2 years in a row, and I couldn't qualify to be the first, so I quit it. But I still really like table tennis. It's one of my biggest passions. Second thing is coffee, which I think is a passion that I share also with Ram. He's also really like it. And it's kind of my fuel for doing essentially everything. And without it, I don't function. So if you try to speak to me before I take the first cup of coffee in the morning, forget it. You will just get a monstrous response some way or another, or just no response at all. That's probably what's going to happen. Third thing that I'm really passionate about is Japan, especially the Japanese culture and the Japanese business culture. I've been doing a lot of effort in penetrating this market since 2015. It's really an extraordinary journey that I've been going through together with our team. And as of today, this is, like, I would say one of the strong points. And one of our advantages as a team. We raised most of the investment from Japanese investors, very conservative ones, and very detail-oriented, like many Europeans, especially Germans, but sometimes even more. And in general, I really like Japan. I used to travel there once a month. Now I don't do it because of the coronavirus, but most of our business is being done there. So it's somewhat interesting for a Western white guy to do business in Japan. Many do it, but not necessarily in an early stage startups. And the last thing, obviously, is that I really like startups, which is why I'm here. This is what makes me smile every day when I open my eyes after getting the coffee. So yeah. So what I want to talk to you today and is why I created this presentation in the first place, because that was a mistake that cost me in thousands of hours that I spent over the last 5 years giving this lecture to essentially hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs worldwide. And it started with a project that me and my friends were doing, which was the first startup that we did, and that I'll share the story in a second. But like from the macro level, we started with a project that went quite successful, and then turned out to be a complete failure. And at the time, when we wanted to move to the second project, we thought that it will be a very good idea that we do not repeat any mistake that we've done in the first project. So we went through some internal process that we tried to write down to list all the conclusions that we have and the things that we want to do differently this time. And the second thing we did was try and understand which of those conclusions or which of those mistakes is validated or is most common among other startups and other entrepreneurs, because we realized, or we thought that, some of the conclusions probably were a very particular case for ourselves, but some of them probably apply to others. And we came up with a list, and the next thing we did was to try and meet other startups once or twice a week, just have a 1 hour conversation over a cup of coffee, um, to hear what they're doing, to see what the problems they struggle with, and to see whether we can contribute one way or another for their success. And this is what gave birth eventually to this presentation, that we got into a very narrowed down list of very highly common mistakes that almost every startup that we saw made, and realized it whether in the first meeting or after 1 or 2 years. And this is when one of our investors just asked, "Hey, why don't you make a presentation about it?" And I said, "All right, yeah, whatever." And I made this presentation, and ever since then, we keep getting the request to do it. So actually, this presentation is already, it will be 5 years old in 6 days from today. So, but it seems like it's still relevant, and we update it from time to time. And all the waves of the Accelerator Frankfurt side as well. So a little bit about the story of what we tried to do. So back in 2012 or 13, we were trying to kind of shift the paradigm of social media, that instead of, very instead of the big audience would be passive and would be just passive consumers of content, where one person is sharing content to everyone, like one-to-many model, we try to change the paradigm so that the masses will require or request or ask for the content that they're interested in, and then certain individuals or others will create the content especially for them. So that was kind of the broad idea for the app that we created. And when you start the startup, obviously you need to have these 5 key ingredients. You need to have an idea, you need to have a business model, proper team. Most of the cases, not always, you need funding, and of course the execution is very, very important. And let me, I'll stop from time to time to ask you some questions just to hear your thoughts also around it. So out of those 5, key elements, which one you think is the most important?
I would say the team.
Team. Can you explain why?
I mean, it's really important that you're on the same level, that you have a strong team that sort of believes in your idea and business model, and that there is more than one driving. Every captain needs like a co-captain and people who knows how to sail and navigate. It's a team effort. So I always like to see that this is one of the really string points for me. If I would do any business, it would definitely be the team.
All right. Anyone else? Other thoughts?
I agree with team, because everything else follows from the team. If the team has the right level of persistence, they'll come up with the right idea, business model, and execution, because they'll be able to stick with it. But if the team, if the individuals are not the right people, then it's not going to work out.
Yeah, I also really say team. It's team for me, and it's even in the small details. Imagine you have the same vision, you have the same ideas on everything, but your one partner goes home at 5 o'clock and you stay every day till 11. The discrepancy, just because of that, it can completely destroy your company. You really have to be at the same page, at the same level of motivation, and if that doesn't work, then everything else doesn't really matter anymore.
Right. So I couldn't agree more. Like, my take on it is obviously also that the team is the most important element. For one main reason, actually, of course, the team will dictate the success of the idea and the business model and the execution, etc. But the one thing that I found out about teams is that it's very difficult to change them once you start. So once you have your co-founders and partners, of course, you can change it, but it takes a lot of effort, and in many cases, it even kills the company. While idea can change every week, every day, business model same, funding, you can get it or not. I mean, it's totally flexible. Same goes with execution. You can try different techniques, different stuff, see what works, see what's not, and changes. But the team is essentially the thing that will carry out throughout the whole project, hopefully. And if you don't get it right, then you're in very deep shit. So that was the most important thing. So yeah, so we were also as a company, we were mostly focused on building the team in the early stages, and we developed the app. And what is the dream for every app developer is that you launch it, and immediately after you launch it, many users subscribe to your product, start using it, retention metrics looks great, and everything like that. And we developed for a couple of months, and we were quite excited to launch. And we launched, and the next thing that happened is that our dream actually came true. So the app grew a lot of traction, especially in Southeast Asia, with many people using it. And we started, started to get a lot of invitation to speak and to show our product in many cases, which was quite awesome, and we're quite happy to do it. But the next thing that happened is that although the user acquisition went well and the retention went well, things started to crumble one step at a time until we reached some kind of phase that things were not so good, and users started to leave the platform. And one thing led to another. We couldn't monetize it, and we reached to a stage that we understood that we have to change direction, probably even develop a whole new product. I made like a story of almost 2 years in a very, in 5 minutes. But the reason I tell you this story is because that was the background for us to come up with that conclusion list that I told you early on in today's talk. And from that conclusion list, we saw that there are kind of 4 families or 4 categories, if you like, of things that in many cases entrepreneurs get wrong, and we wanted to distribute the message. So and those 4 questions are challenges in being a good problem-oriented thinker. I'll explain that in a minute. For some the guys here in the audience, like, you already know what I'm talking about. The other family of conclusions was around value creation and how do you do it properly, and how do you focus your value creation so that you can actually achieve success. The third element was how do you choose your market or your customer segment. And the fourth one was the overall strategy, and how do you wrap up all those 3 in a way that would make sense and that will make your organization very efficient. And what I like to kind of say up front before we even start is that my kind of personal goal or mission here is to give you my knowledge and my passion about it. And if you only take like one conclusion out of it, or if it made sense for even the smallest thing of what you do, then I achieved my goal. So I'd be really happy to know after the lecture what were the things that were appealing to you, or what were the things that actually made you rethink about some of the stuff that you're doing. That'd be really helpful for me. But even if it didn't contribute at all, that's also perfectly fine. So let's dive right in and talk about problem-oriented thinking. So how many of you can just nod with your head, how many of you know this app or this product? Or you can raise your hand. All right, so how many of you actually used this product in the past? All right, great. So can someone tell me well, this, just for those who maybe not familiar with the product, it's called Wave. It's some kind of a social-based navigation app. It's an Israeli company that was acquired by Google for $1 billion a few years ago. Quite successful in many places in the world. And I'd like to start with a very simple question, like if you can tell me, what's the problem that Waze solved back in the days? Like, what made them so successful? What was the problem that they were tackling?
I mean, they were better than Google Maps because they were also sourcing a lot of data and information. So they would be able to provide real-time data on like the road situation, or if something is closed. So they were just like more up to date than Google Maps.
Yeah, I think the.
All right. So let me just repeat on what you said. They were sourcing data, which enabled them to give more real-time updates, to be more updated than Google Maps or any other service that was available at the time. And this is what made them successful. Now, let's examine your answer before we move to the next answer. So you mostly talk about the solution aspect, right? You say it enabled them to be real-time. Real-time is a solution for a problem that someone has, or they made them more updated. Being more updated is a solution for something. So now let's try another candidate on what is the problem that Waze solved.
I would say that it plays into that solution over there, of course. But from like a real life scenario, I use this a lot in Brazil, and it was to find the blitz, right, where there would be like these police stops and the likes. So yeah, that was a big problem in Brazil that a lot of people were facing, because there was this new what do you call it, this new regulation that kind of stopped a lot of drivers. So Waze kind of allowed the crowdsourcing to pinpoint these locations very easily, so you'd be prepared.
All right. And you think that is what originally made Waze successful? This is like the core problem, or this is something like virtual?
Well, I think that because I think that Brazil was one of the main countries where Waze was like super popular, like one of the biggest ones. So of course, having this kind of crowdsourced information added to the app very easily, I think that helped them spur new kinds of information that could be added by people, and thus growing the community itself. So really connected all the drivers together, really.
So yeah, again, like you're trying to explain a problem by explaining the solution, right? You're saying they were able to source information in order to create a new layer of information, which in your example, which is fine, I accept that, is that people did not know where the police stops are, and they wanted to know where the police stops are. So the problem was that people were getting stopped by police and they could not avoid it. And then Waze came and they told them, where's the police? That was the solution to one of the problems. All right, so anyone else? Last candidate?
Yeah, like to be honest, the way I get to know Waze was exactly that thing. Like my friends will say, if you want to avoid the police, just use this app because it tells you where the police is. And
well, I mean, it's a great answer because we're all entrepreneurs, and I guess we all got in trouble some way or another.
Ruben, you had something to say.
Nowadays. Sorry?
I know. I would say if you start from the problem, then I would say the problem is with road vehicles. So not just any kind of vehicle. It's not a train. It's not an airplane. It's not even you on foot. It's really you with a car or with any other road vehicle, and you want to get from A to B yourself. Not with a cab driver, but really it's your car you're driving, and you want to go from A to B the fastest way possible basically in real time. So you have to know how you can outsmart traffic. I would say where the police is kind of something that extra that came because of the crowdsourcing aspect, but I wouldn't say that was the outset of what Waze was for. And I think just the three words underneath their logo underneath their name actually say it: outsmarting traffic together. And that's basically what you're doing, because you have these road vehicles want to get from A to B. You want to outsmart traffic. You want to go the fastest way you can. And the best way you can do that is by getting all this real-time information, which today it's crowdsourced.
This is sorry to stop you, but this is what you want. But the question is not what do you want. What do you want is a solution. Why do you want it? This is the problem. Why do you need to outsmart traffic? Why do you want to know what's the best way to go from point A to point B? And by the way, other GPS apps helped you with that. Maybe a little bit like not as efficient as Waze, but other apps help you with that as well. So just and now I'll go back to the presentation. By the way, Ruben.
Yeah, also I wanted to summarize it as basically it comes down to time. That you can use your time.
To time.
Anything else? Yeah.
Time, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. By the way, Ruben, I would really appreciate if you go back to that Game of Thrones background. That's really awesome.
I also have where I sit in the couch of The Simpsons, if you prefer that one.
All right, go ahead. Surprise me. Yeah, speaking about other funny backgrounds, I'll show you some of mine later. So yeah, what I want to tell you or to emphasize is that as we can see, like there are different answers for this. It's a very simple question, like what was the problem that Waze solved? Well, it's quite plain question, but the answers were quite diverse. And the reason that I found out for such diverse answers is that for us as humans, we were not raised to be good problem-oriented thinkers. When we look at the world, we mostly look at solutions and we look on how it helps us to achieve certain goals or to achieve certain objectives. So it's always about what's in it for me or how does this thing helps me. And this is how we usually like judge things. And this applies to many, many humans, of course, all the users, but I think that entrepreneurs and co-founders are falling also under the broad category of a human, which means that we're not immune to this bias of being solution-oriented thinkers rather than problem-oriented thinkers. And what I want to tell you is the story that I heard, that sorry for the Hebrew, I'll translate in a second, but the story that I heard that kind of gave me a very big aha moment about this point is that a few years ago I was in a meetup where the founder of Waze, Uri Levin, gave a lecture about the very early days of Waze, and he explained something that was shocking for me. And he said that the first thing they wanted to do, of course, is a social navigation app, and they tried different types of approaches, etc., etc. But one of the most life-changing things for that company was that they started to give the product for specific focus groups, which is not something that you do in many cases in B2C apps, but they decided they're going to do it anyway. And they gave the app to one focus group of sales representatives, SDRs of large pharmaceutical companies. And those SDRs usually go to different doctors, like 8 or 10 doctors a day, trying to promote different medicine or different medical devices. And they gave it to them. And after a couple of weeks, they came back and they asked them, all right, did Waze help you in some way or another? And again, we're talking about the very early days of that service. It was way before Google even knew what Waze is. And the sales representative told them, listen, like the app is great. It consumes a lot of data, which was a very big problem in the early days. But the main thing is that they were saying the following messages. One is that we already know how to get from point A to point B. All right, we're doing this route from doctor to doctor for a few years. We know how to get from point A to point B, and we know what's the, let's say, most optimized way. But the thing that this app changed for us is that now we could actually know how much time it's going to take to go from point A to point B, or whether it is more efficient to go from point A to point C and then go back to point B. And the reason that Waze were good at it is because of the social traffic data that they had. And that was a very big aha moment, because what Waze realized is that the problem that they're solving is that compared to other products is that people, like other products, could tell the users how much time it takes to go from point A to point B, but this information, this ETA information, was not reliable enough, but Waze gave a very accurate one. So the problem was, from their point of view, back in the days, that the problem people had was that the core problem, I'm going to talk about it in a second, but the core problem was that people don't actually know how much time it's really going to take from point A to point B. And that made a huge difference for those sales representatives to know this information. Why? Because suddenly, instead of making it into 8 doctors a day, they were able to go to 10 or 11 because they were more efficient. They were able to go back and pick their kids from kindergarten or school in time. And if they were late to a meeting, they were able to tell how much time they're going to be late to that meeting. And that made a huge difference to their career and family life, because if you meet 8 doctors a day, or if you meet 10 doctors a day, that can make a huge difference in your end of the month performance. And the end of the month performance will dictate how much bonus you get and will dictate whether you being promoted or not. And that made a huge difference for them at the time. And they understood that this factor of actually knowing how much time it's going to take is going to make a huge difference for other people as well. And this is when they understood that the main focal point for the product is to actually help people understand how much time it's really going to take. Because in general, people know how to get from point A to point B. They know what are the alternatives, which one is better, and they know how to choose it by themselves, whether using Waze or without using Waze. But once they choose the path, they want to know how much time it's going to actually take. And so what is kind of the moral lesson we learned from here? So a few things. First, it's really difficult to imitate success, right? Waze is a very successful company. It's very difficult to go back to the early days. We heard here a couple of responses about the problem that they were solving. The police issue is kind of a thing that was added later. Of course, it gave a lot of value, but it's definitely at least from their perspective, it's not a core problem that they're solving. It's something that comes as an addition to the value proposition that actually made Google acquire them for $1 billion. And the second thing is that problem-oriented thinking is very important in order to focus your whole company. And I'm going to try and convince you about this point in the next couple of slides. So going on to, and by the way, in Hebrew it says, don't recalculate the route. I already know the way. Which was some kind of something was published in the paper when they were acquired. So let's go to the second layer of problem-oriented thinking, or the second kind of conclusion is that let's say that, right, so I'm a social or environmental entrepreneur. Let's pretend. I'm not really, but let's pretend that I'm a social entrepreneur. And I go to the beach in Tel Aviv and I see a lot of garbage sitting there on the beach and destroying my atmosphere. And I really don't like it, and I want other people to enjoy the beach as well. So is that a problem? Let's say that I see this phenomena in reality, and I want to stop it. I want to find some kind of solution to that problem. But in fact, many of the problems that we see are actually symptoms. So for us as entrepreneurs, many times when we start a company, so we see something that bothers us, something that we want to change, something that we feel that can be done better. And in 99% of the cases, what we see is a symptom. It's not actually the problem that is causing that symptom to happen. Because most of the things that happen in reality are symptoms to something else that is causing them. And this is a very common mistake that I personally have been seeing through a lot of startups, essentially hundreds that I've been meeting for the past years. And why is it so important? Because many of the founders, they focus their solution on trying to solve the symptom, and they don't do enough research and they don't do enough validation to find the core problem or the root cause of the problem, which is actually making that symptom appear in reality. And this is a very big bias. And the reason I really emphasize this point is that understanding whether you are now focused on solving a symptom or solving a problem can make the difference between being a successful company or shutting down your business in few years or months or whatever time it's going to take. And the reason for it is because let's talk about this polluted beach or dirty beach. So I'm an entrepreneur. I come to the beach. I see all the garbage. And then I can have different kinds of assumptions, like how can I solve this problem? So one assumption can be that Israeli people are just douchebags and they don't get enough proper education, which is why they go to the beach and leave all their belongings there, like barbaric people, whatever. And so what I want to do is to create some education system for young people so that they would know that it's not appropriate to keep their garbage on the beach after they go to the whatever they want to do. That can be one solution that I can develop, and another solution can perhaps be that I say, all right, so I don't think I can really educate the people, but let's create a new cleaning device that I'll give the municipality or the government to clean up the beach, and that way I can create the business. And when I'm focused on the symptom, on trying to solve the symptom, those root causes are really hiding from me. So one of the very common mistake is to focus on the symptom and not to focus your solution on the core problems. And once you do enough research and you understand what causes this symptom to happen, or what is the major cause for this symptom to happen, this is where you should focus your solution at. So, and it is so important, because if I did not do that step as an entrepreneur, I could spend the best years and the best money and to make huge sacrifices. Guys, everybody here, I'm sure, regardless of whatever I'm going to say, I'm sure that everybody here made huge sacrifices to establish your company and your startup, and you're still doing, and probably you are going to do a lot more sacrifices than you even imagine if you want to be successful. So let's say if I'm an entrepreneur and I chose to do an education system, while the actual root cause is that the government doesn't have cleaning resources and they don't have a proper cleaning device. So I might be spending 2, 3, 5 years on making an education system that will not solve the symptom that I saw. The beach would still be polluted because perhaps I educated the people, but maybe all the garbage comes from the sea, from some ships in the sea that throw away the garbage, and everything is coming down to the shore. And if I'll do the other way, I'll create some kind of cleaning device. But the problem is that people are not educated. So it's not matter how many times a day I would clean the beach. Anyway, the moment an uneducated person will come to the beach, it will become polluted again. So focusing on the root cause of the problem can really make the difference, whether I waste my time on pursuing a cause that doesn't worth it, and whether I really solve a problem or I focus on the symptom. And this is a very common mistake that I've seen a lot of very good, brilliant people do, and we really need to be careful about it. But that's not enough when it comes to problem-oriented thinking. There's another very common mistake that I've been seeing as well. Back in the days when we had this conclusion list that I told you about, and we started meeting all sorts of startups, so there was some kind of weird trend in Tel Aviv, in Israel, of entrepreneurs doing a lot of products for pet owners, especially like social products for pet owners and dog owners, cat owners, whatever. And I encountered a couple of those, and one of the entrepreneurs was like a really interesting example for me that I just cannot forget. And this is why I put it in the example. So I met up with that guy and I told him, like, all right, we make coffee, chit chat, blah, blah, blah. Then like the first question is, what do you guys do? So he told me we're doing social network for dogs. And I was like, all right, tell me more. Like, what's the problem that you're solving? And then he started asking me a couple of questions. The first question he asked, like, do you have friends? And I said, well, not many, but some people like me. So yeah, I have a couple of friends. And do you have a dog? And I said, yes. And he said, does your dog have friends? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think that my dog refers to some other dogs as friends, but yeah, whatever. He says, you care about your dog? And I said, yeah, of course I care about my dog. He said, so why don't your dog have friends? Like, that makes sense. If human has friends, dog should have too. And I told him, all right, so what made you think that this is a problem worth solving? And he told me, listen, Nimrod, I went to several neighborhoods in Tel Aviv, and I went door by door. I was knocking on every door. And if I heard a dog, I would start to engage in some kind of an informal interview. And he told me that based on that interview, more than 90% of the dog owners in Tel Aviv, and I can tell you, I don't know which one of you have ever visited Tel Aviv except Ron, but many people own dog in Tel Aviv. Not enough of them having children, but many of them definitely have dogs. And he said 90% of the people wanted their dogs to have friends. And I was like, all right, shocking. First of all, I was quite shocked by this guy insane motivation to go door by door and ask those ridiculous questions from all of the dog owners in those neighborhoods in Tel Aviv. But the thing this guy missed is a very important thing that appears also in the business canvas that you guys did, but it's also a questions being asked so many times by VCs, and so many entrepreneurs get this question wrong. And So imagine that the interview that he did, he was like going, hey, do you have a dog? Yeah. The same question, like, do you have friends? Yeah. Do you care about your dog? Yeah. You want your dog to have friends? Yeah. All right. But if he would just ask one more question, which goes like that, what do you do as of today to make your dog have friends? Then you can have a spectrum of answers. Like one type of answers can be, I do nothing. And the other type of answer can be, listen, we have this WhatsApp group that whenever I take my dog down for a walk, all the other neighbors with dogs, they come as well to the dog park and we socialize our dogs and etc. Blah, blah, blah. And this question is so important, because if you hear an answer that the people are doing nothing, that means that this problem might exist, but it's not big enough so that it will be painful for people to try and hack life, hack reality in a way that would actually result in some, I don't know, weird solution or not so efficient solutions. And then if you hear the first type of answer is I do nothing, you should doubt the way or the direction of your company. You should rethink whether you're doing something that's actually worth solving. But if you hear the other type, that, oh, we have this and this and this hack and solution and blah, 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 and you come up with something which is 10x better than that, then people will fall in love with what you do and they will be eager to collaborate with you. And that's so important for any success of any business. And not asking and not going deep enough into the existing solution, it's a very common mistake that many entrepreneurs do, which really keeps them blind from understanding whether the problem that they're solving is not only valid or not valid. It's not only a binary question, it's just how big of a problem it is to your clients and what they actually do as of today. This is one mistake. The other mistake is that this is a small one, is that many people tend to interpret the existing solution question as your competition. And the question is definitely not about competition. It's about different techniques that people use, not about other companies that offer similar solutions as yours, because there can be 10 different companies that are doing social networks for dogs, and all of them are doing the same mistake, that solving a problem not worth solving. So this is definitely a thing that that worth, a little bit about more rethinking or internal validation for every company, including myself. So this is it for the problem-oriented thinking. In the higher level, some of you guys, we went into more detail into some of the aspects here. And I want to move to the second thing. I'm not sure we're going to be able to go through all four because already time starts running out. But I'll be happy to be at your disposal by email or WhatsApp after this session. So the next thing that derives also from problem-oriented thinking is value creation. And the first question that we should ask, which might be very obvious, especially for you guys that you already established the companies, most of you already took the product to market. But in many cases, we just need to go back to the basics and what is value, and how do we create value, and how do we know if we created value. This is really important. And I want to give you some kind of a metaphor to the way I see value. So let us pretend that we had some door between us, and this door has many locks on it. And I would come to each and every one of you and tell you, hey, let's say, hey, Jonathan, behind this door, there is a bag with 1 million euros inside. So under the assumption that you don't have 100 million euros in your bank account as of today, which some of you might have and you don't tell us because you probably had a lot of Bitcoins back in the days, but let us assume that you don't have 100 million euros in your bank account. What would you do in order to open that door? So if you are, let's say, economically rational, you would do anything that costs less than $1 million to open that door. If you're a normal human being, you would do a lot of things, including hiring, I don't know, some bulldozer, tractor, helicopter, whatever, to take down the door and take the $1 million. But if I would come to you and say, listen, there is a 100 euro bill behind that door, so most likely, without, not that I disrespect 100 euro, but you would try to open, 1 or 2 times the door, try to play with the locks, and if it doesn't work, after a couple of minutes, you would just give up and go back to whatever you do. And this metaphor is very important because the amount of money behind this door is the value that you offer, and the locks on the door is your product. And most likely, and forgive me for saying that, most likely all of the products that you guys are developing or developed in the past, they suck at the beginning. And in many cases, it doesn't work as you want. It's not as focused as you would want it to be. The users many times don't really get what you're trying to do, or if they do get, they don't get the really awesome stuff. So your goals eventually would be to increase the amount of money behind that door and to reduce the amount of locks. It's two vectors that you need to play with. And but the key for your success would be the ability to engage with the users enough time so that they will forgive you for all of the mistakes that you do. And the only way to do it is to increase the values, because the locks will stay there and probably going to stay there for a long time until you're really, really great. And that brings me to, how do you focus your values? So obviously, like the most basic answer is that you solve the problem. Okay, this is the number one thing. But what happens in reality, and as you know, and I will not go deep into that, but because I'm quite sure that everybody's familiar with the concept of MVP, you develop an MVP, but how do you focus your MVP? How do you find that sweet spot? So that goes, if we go back to the Waze example, that goes exactly to your ability to understand what is the core problem, what is the most painful aspect of your users that you guys are solving, and then you solve that and only that. You don't do anything else. You don't engage with any other features. And even if the users say, oh, it would be nice to have this, say no, because you must focus only on the things that really, really matter, which is the problem that you're solving. And this is kind of the big compass on how to generate value. But even here, there is a very common mistake. It's a common mistake that I saw many entrepreneurs do, is that, all right, you understand that you have this and this problem. Let's say in this example, like the problem would be that people want to reach from point A to point B as fast as possible to do whatever they want to do. So eventually my dream or my vision as an entrepreneur is to deliver them a car, but to develop a car is too expensive. And what happens to many entrepreneurs is that they fall in love with a dream too much, that they're starting to develop certain components of the dream, like the upper example, and their users are not satisfied because they're not getting the value in every stage. Like in stage 1, they cannot go faster from point A to point B, and same for stage 2, stage 3. Only when they reach stage 4, it becomes good enough. And they will not wait for you until you reach for stage 4. Let me tell you, this is 100% sure. They will definitely not wait for you. You will definitely not be able to fundraise and to sustain your company until you reach that stage 4 if you choose the upper way. But in the lower example, you still generate the same value and you still solve the same problem. You just, at first, you do it in a very moderate and very modest way. And from step to step, you still delivering the value, but delivering it much better from stage to stage. And what you can also look here is that in stage 1, it's a skateboard, and in stage 3, it's bicycle, and then motorcycle, and then a car. It's totally different products. And what happens to many companies that they develop the first product and they try to improve it from stage to stage to satisfy the users. But what should happen, and this is what I saw in many successful companies, is that from stage to stage, they actually delete the whole product and develop it from zero to go up to the next stage. So don't consider scalability from the first stage. Just consider value, optimize for value. And even if you cannot deliver the dream and the big dream, deliver whatever you can as of today, but deliver a value, not part of value, not partial stuff, a complete, comprehensive product that does what you claim it does, even if it doesn't do it as good as you imagine it can do. And going into a little bit more value-related mistakes or misjudgments, there's also a thing which, for common people, we say it's the chicken and egg problem, or more professional term will be the multiple values paradox. So with many startups, what happens is that you have two audiences that you need to satisfy, two audiences that you need to serve. Like the classic example would be an e-commerce platform. Like you have the sellers that are selling their products on your platform. You have the buyers who are buying the products from the platform. but those two audiences, they have totally different needs. All right, and when I say needs, I say they also have totally different problems that you need to solve for them. And to find one problem for one customer segment is tough. So now think about solving two problems for two customer segments in one product. This is a very complicated thing to do for many companies. And the first point would be that first you should acknowledge whether you have or you don't have a multiple value paradox. And if you, by the way, which is also stands for MVP. And if you do have the multiple value paradox, then you should consider some strategy of which audience you're going to serve first. You never serve the two audiences equally. Why? Because if we look again at this e-commerce example, if you have too many sellers on your marketplace and not enough buyers, then the sellers would leave because they don't sell their products. And if you have too many buyers and not enough sellers, and the buyers don't have things to buy, so the buyers will leave. So you will never be good enough to satisfy both audiences in your marketplace. So the thing is to find which audience is more critical in the beginning and satisfy only this audience. And like the sad thing here is that I don't have like the magic formula for you guys to solve it, but my message is first acknowledge whether you do have or you don't have the situation for your company. And the second stage, try to find out some strategy. How do you solve this problem? So one very brilliant example that I heard of a few years ago was an example of Fiverr. For those, I assume that some of you know, the other doesn't know, it's an e-commerce platform for very simple services like designing a logo or writing, I don't know, introduction paragraph or whatever, where people can come there and purchase those services for $5. So if I want to design a logo, I just go into this platform, I choose a designer, I pay $5 and they design a logo for me. They have different kinds of products that exist in the marketplace. And this is a classic example. And what Fiverr did in the early days to solve the chicken and egg problem is that they said, all right, what is more important for us to achieve first? Do we need to first onboard the sellers, or first we should onboard the buyers? And eventually they decided to first onboard the sellers, and they created their landing page and the website in a way that would optimize only for onboarding of sellers. They wouldn't even care about the buyers. Why? Because the services that they sold were so cheap, so they just bought the services themselves. So once a seller would join the platform, they would start ordering from him, and they were building the company based on the sellers that existed on the platform. So they did not hire designers, they did not hire content writers, they were just onboarding people who were doing that to the platform, and they were buying their services through the platform. And once they reached critical mass of sellers, this is when they completely shifted the landing page to optimize only for onboarding of buyers, and they started marketing for buyers. And this is the way they could optimize the marketplace. And if you guys have this problem and you want to brainstorm or think about it, I'll be glad to help you. I know tons of stories on how people solved it. I also gave some examples to one of the companies, not necessarily about marketplace balancing, but about like how to acquire, the big accounts, and some strategies on how to get the big accounts by capturing the smaller accounts first. There are a lot of stuff. And so this is about the multiple value paradox. And when I made the presentation, I was actually quite intrigued by the question, what actually came first, the chicken or the egg? So I went to the academic literature and I looked for a reference, and actually the eggs came historically much before the chickens. So the moral lesson here is that there is an answer, all right, for the chicken and egg paradox. You just need to find it for your own company, for your own product, and you really need to spend time and research it. It's really an important aspect of being a good startup. So I'm going to go through the next points a little bit more in brief, and then I'm going to take some questions from you guys because it's important. Also, I want to hear you as well. And all right, so then another thing that that I've been hearing a lot when I was in the first day as an entrepreneur is that many American VCs were used to say like, building a product, they used to say this sentence a lot, building a product for one person or a billion is the same effort, so make sure you build it for a billion. Not. Don't do it. Definitely don't do it. Never do it. I strongly advise and advocate against that advice. If you hear it from anyone, stay away from them. Definitely, they don't understand anything. You should definitely not build your product for a billion people. You should build your product only for the market who really needs it. Even if it is extremely small, even if it's only a few tens of people, few hundreds of people, you only start with them, and only then you expand. And as I gave you, like in this MVP example, every stage of your product, you can completely delete the product and rebuild it for the next audience. This is very, very important. Don't try to make any shortcuts. I've seen a lot of companies spending a lot of efforts, including myself. Like our first app was around 200 screens, which is like Twitter, and we were a team of 5 people. We couldn't even support this product. It was, the amount of bugs that were generated were much more than we could even, take. And we were focused more on solving bugs than developing the product. So definitely don't try to accommodate the need for a large amount of people. Try to accommodate the need only of those who really need your service at the moment. Next point is that all of us, or most of us as founders, we do a lot of fundraising. And in the fundraising process, we try to convince investors. And one of the aspects that investors are really interested about is your total addressable market. And for us as entrepreneurs, we want to convince them that the total addressable market, and also we want to convince ourselves, of course, that the total addressable market is the largest possible. We want to optimize for large total addressable market. And then a very common mistake is that while we are optimizing our total addressable market, we also increase the initial addressable market that we're going to target. And that is also a very big mistake, which is while you should optimize for the biggest total addressable market, you should definitely optimize for the smallest initial addressable market, because that will be your most efficient way to understand whether you're giving value or not giving value, or what you should correct in order to deliver value the way your users deserve. This is a very important point. And the last point I'm going to touch for today is that choosing a market is fairly difficult, even though, especially like I've seen in almost every company in this wave of Accelerator Frankfurt, like most of you have several market segments. This is usually like not a good sign. It usually means that, all right, you have a big potential, but you didn't think enough on who do you prioritize or who really needs the product the most. And you rather have one segment. And here, what I want to give you is an example of Better Place and Tesla, which they try to tackle the same problems, and they try to create an electric vehicle. And Better Place was founded by amazing, formidable founders, and raised a lot of money and did a lot of noise. But eventually, it failed. And one of the reasons for that is that they were, I wouldn't say like compared to Tesla, they were choosing the easy way and not the right way. And one of the most interesting things that I learned is when I saw a very early days interview with Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla. He said that he was looking at companies like Better Place and others, and what he realized, and it was quite amazing for me to hear, is that from his perspective, one of the biggest reasons they failed is that the mass market, all right, this initial addressable market, was not ready for an electric vehicle. And the reasons were numerous. Like the first reason was that usually family grade type of vehicles, or families, they don't buy car every year. They buy cars for like every 5 or 8 years. So they want something that is reliable, and they don't know if they can trust an electric vehicle. Another questions that were raised was like, what happens if the battery runs out? How expensive would it be to change my battery? And all sorts of questions that just, for the normal population, which is generally risk averse, they didn't want to go ahead, and they didn't got enough orders for the Better Place car. So what Elon Musk did, he said, all right, we need to create trust with the mass market. We need to convince them that electric vehicle would be the future for them. And the way to prove that is that we are going to choose one hell of a crazy mission, which is to create a high-end sports car, which will be so expensive that only like 0.001% of the population can even afford. But if we are able to achieve this technological feat, and if we're able to create this high-end sports electric vehicle, then all the other population would see that, and they would start believing in our company that we're able to deliver what we're saying we're going to deliver, and it is reliable enough. Because if a company can create a sports-grade electric vehicle, they can also make a family-grade electric vehicle. And he said that, I think, already at least 4 or 5 years ago. And Arnold Schwarzenegger bought the car, and people started to see that, all right, this amazing sports car, it works better than other cars in this category, and that was quite an amazing technological feat. Obviously, most of us, we don't have the resources to allow for such venture, but he did, which is quite of amazing. But the moral lesson that I learned here was, oh, and by the way, like he back in the days, he said we're going to make a sports grade car, and then the next thing would be to degrade it to a family grade car. And he pursued this strategy, and so far seems like it's pretty much successful. So the lesson here is to choose the right way and not necessarily the easy way. For us, for me personally, like when we started this project in 2015, we were doing stress monitoring and emotion monitoring, and the largest market and probably the easy one was the United States. But eventually we decided to go to Japan, which was the right market for us for several reasons. But it was definitely not the easy market because of the cultural gaps, and it's very far from Israel. We don't even have a direct flight there, and many other reasons that were stopping many companies from taking their solutions over there. But looking backwards, it was the smartest decision, and our business was able to grow really, really fast because it was the right market for us. So just moving ahead really, really quick, and kind of to wrap up what we've been saying here. So we talked about 3 of the 4. I didn't have time to talk about strategy because we have another 10 minutes left, and I want you to ask me some questions as well. But if we look at from the start point that I had until the point I realized that I'm failing, one of the main lessons were about like problem-oriented thinking and value creation and choosing the right market. But the biggest lesson was that if I could, I would rather think about those problems before I start, or at least when I start, I would stop for a second to think about it, because that would make my time and my effort more efficient and not make me lose very precious years of my time. Kind of my last slide is that those conclusions are very important, but at the end of the day, there is like the 5th element, which is luck. It's very, very important for success of any business, but luck doesn't just comes and knocks on your door. Usually it comes to those who work really, really hard for it. So I'm sure that you guys all are hard workers. So, the harder you work, the luckier you get. So this is the thing that I believe in. And yeah, that's it for today. And I thank you very much. And I'm going to be taking questions if you guys have to answer.
Hey, sorry, I was removed from the call for some reason. That's why I actually missed the part where you were summarizing the 3 of the 4 topics. Are we supposed to do it? Yeah, sorry, I dropped off the call for some reason, so I didn't hear the last part. So I heard up until we covered 3 of the 4. Yeah. Yes, I heard just before this, so yeah, I didn't see this.
All right, so the conclusion here was that if I could, I would rather think about this thing before I start, or at least as soon as I start, or if I already started, to stop for a moment and think about it. And being part of an accelerator program is a great opportunity, guys, for you to do this kind of rethinking and validation process. All right,
any questions?
One question, Nimrod. Thanks a lot for the presentation. What are good indicators for you that you're on the right track, like for these points?
Okay, so one of the greatest indicators, like your compass eventually should be whether you understand the problem or you don't understand the problem. And your way to know whether you understand the problem or not is the way users react to the product when you present it to them. And if you don't have a product to present, so you should have at least a correlation between your problem statement and their answers to the following question. And this question is a very simple one, which is, what is the hardest thing about XYZ, or the hardest thing about being a website builder, the hardest thing about being a crypto trader? And if your problem statement falls in the at least top 3 priorities of their answers, then that is usually like a good indicator for you guys to know that you're on the right track. But the best indicator would be that once you launch the product, you see that there is a good product market fit. And a product market fit in simple human language means a valid, big enough problem with a matching solution.
Thanks.
So many of you guys, by the way, have great solutions. I have no idea if those solutions actually match to a valid problem. This is a thing that I've seen a lot, which is why I try to start from the beginning with many of you guys. It's to think about the problem. And by the way, problem is not a general term. Problem is the problem of the customer segment that you want to target. Okay, and this customer segment is the segment that is paying for you, and not other second degree or third degree segments. Like if I'm an app builder and I have users, so if my customer is an app builder and this app builder has users, so the problem of my customer's users is not my concern. My concern is the app builder. What is the problem statement for them, for my direct paying users? Those are the paying customers if you're B2B. This is the most important stuff. Anyone else? Ram?
No, I always enjoy listening to your wise words at the end of the day, and I think what the guys this was the whole process of the accelerator program, is to get you thinking in that direction. We talked a lot about the business canvas and how to really pinpoint the problem, and especially the target audience, and not such a wide audience, but really to focus on a small target group. And like Nimrod said, does it answer their problems? And when I try to think about coin rule or engrave, yeah, it's something that we could brainstorm, or I'm sure you have brainstormed. What do you guys think? Coin rule, engrave? Especially, I'm talking to you because you're the B2C here in the meeting at the moment.
And what is the question exactly?
So when you're looking at your target audience, have you defined it narrow enough, and are you answering really the problem, the pain in the market?
Yeah. Well, the first thing we ever did before we even started to think about building a company around this was we really went out of the building to test the assumptions of. So we had a problem, which was which solution would we entrust with our very last Bitcoin. And the big problem for us was there was no secure solution, or one that was secure enough or easy to use enough to trust. So we set out to do that. And the first thing we did was get out of the building, ask as many people as we could, basically, let's say the lean startup method, to see if these assumptions that we had for the 3 of us also made sense for all these other people. And we asked questions such as, what is the most important feature for you with a crypto wallet? And we saw that over 80% of people said it was security, which sounds so logical, but in the banking sector, nobody would ever say, I'm switching because of the security of my bank. And also, if we asked for, what would you do if you had to choose between security and usability? And we saw that people were actually willing to give up usability if they could have security. So all of these aspects got us to believe, or really to validate, that there was indeed such a problem. And also, when we look at what Nimrod just showed, which was basically you start with a skateboard, and then it becomes a bicycle, and so on. For us, the takeaway we had was the MVPs were already in the market and already proved that there was a market. So solutions that were not as user-friendly as it could have been, not as secure as it could have been, and where users also actively said those things to us when we asked them how they felt about their existing solutions. So while there were MVPs in the market, we also had the impression, let's build the next step in that evolution towards the car. So we actually set out to build the car, but by continuously evaluating if it made sense, if we had to go further with the car, or if we had to go back a bit towards the motorcycle, and that's a bit how we approached it.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And coin rule?
Yeah, from our side, so we've done a lot of user research. I think we showed that in one actually of the workshops, some of the user research we've done, through which we built up user needs and then we solutionized that. And it's something we continue to do extensively. So we get a lot of user feedback. The sign, as I said, I think on one or two occasions before, which for us we are really enjoying at the moment, is that our users, if something is not working, they don't just leave, they actually like insult us in the chat and get really upset. And that actually shows how much they care. And one other interesting thought that also kind of shows a bit how we think about this, on the workshop with Deep Work. So Deep Work worked with Hummingbot, which is kind of a competitor of ours, but really they're slightly focused on different things. But they have a very similar kind of core problem that they're addressing, which is users want to build bots or want to make money in crypto markets, but they struggle to have access to the right tools. Now, there's a lot of complexity to get started. And what Hummingbot did was, because their product focuses on like really advanced users, they realized, okay, a lot of users don't understand how to use this product. We're not going to bother explaining it to them. We'll focus on the small group of users who understand and who are willing to like set up all the command line environment, etc. Which is which is great. I really like respect the way they approach it. Whereas our niche specifically is actually exactly the opposite. It's the users who would trade, but they don't necessarily have the time or the interest to go through setting up, like, let's say, a command line interface. Like, they don't feel comfortable with that. It's kind of more like the typical, like the iPhone user type. So that shows how we think about our user base and the niche that we are addressing.
Awesome. Guys, we are over time. Are there any other questions to Nimrod? I would be happy also if you guys want, I'll be happy to connect you. Just send me a message through Slack, and we can definitely take it further on that point. Nimrod, thank you very, very, very much. You're on mute. I'll unmute you. Oh, okay.
You're welcome, and I wish you guys the best of success, best of luck, and go and get them. Get those euros. Get those euros into your bank account. Get them fast.
Awesome. Thank you, guys, and see you later.
Thank you.
Tim, commercial.